Hi, Martin.
Hi, Mark. Okay.
Now live. So if you'd like to share your screen, and I'll formally introduce you.
Okay. Thank you.
So the second session of the day will feature one of our event partners, actually, Optimal Industrial Technologies, and they provide automation services to the life cycle, to the life science and process industries, delivering measurable improvements in minimising development and production costs, maximising product quality and throughput, and shortening time to market. You can meet with them later on at the exhibition booth, and you can find out more. But in the meantime, I'd like to formally introduce the presenter, who is the CEO, Martin Gadsby, and he will share some insights through a presentation which focuses on leveraging PAT knowledge management technology in your laboratories. So, Martin, I can see your presentation. And it's in presentation mode. Everything's good to go. So I shall leave you to it, and I'll go sit in the audience and watch the session.
And heckle. Thank you, Mark, very much indeed. And
take care, Martin. Thank you.
It was an interesting first faff there of what to display. Yeah, it was interesting. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mark, very much indeed, and thanks for the opportunity to present. This is really a quick presentation on just some ideas around how you can sort of leverage sort of PAT knowledge management, the technology that's been developed actually for PAT knowledge management into laboratories, because there are a marked number of similarities and parallels between the two, the needs of the two technologies, as it were. So starting off with, and I hope you'll humour me, as it were, just in case anyone in the audience is not familiar with PAT. So PAT, that's not portable appliance testing, as I was asked once. It's all around process analytical technology, which I always find difficult to pronounce at my old age. So it's all around measuring product quality attributes in real time. So in the same as in your laboratory where you're trying to measure attributes, you're actually measuring product quality attributes in real time. So what we're trying to do in the manufacturing environment is move away from the quality by testing, where you actually test after the event. So you add value to the product and then you find it's scrap or you find it's rework, which is not a great way of manufacturing. You're actually measuring the quality in real time. And if you're running closed loop control based on product quality, then you control the critical process parameters to optimize the quality during that unit operation. So you just continually optimize not only the quality but the productivity of the process. So for PAT, that's just in a nutshell, and that's an engineer's view. I'm sure a lot of purists would shout and throw rotten tomatoes at me, but that's just a quick high-level view of PAT. So it's applying modern technology to measure product quality in real time using typically analytical instruments. You can use smart sensors, but at the moment, the state of the art is most of the time we're using analytical instruments. So as I say, the demands of a PAT system are very, very similar to those, some aspects are very similar to those in a smart laboratory. So when I say that, what attributes are shared between the two technologies? Well, straight away, we've got multiple univariate and multivariate instrumentation. So in a PAT system, we might be connecting to pH, we might be connecting to temperature, we might be connecting to flow meters, all these types of instruments, which any good automation system is connecting to anyway. However, we're also connecting to HPLCs, we're connecting to FTIR, we're connecting to Raman, we're connecting to all sorts of instrumentation, it might be NMR. So all these instrumentation sorts, we're connecting to these, and the key thing is we're connecting to them bidirectionally. So in the earlier discussion, we're talking about metadata. So the first step is we're collecting all the metadata automatically around the instrument. So we know exactly how the instrument was configured, we know its calibration status, when we gather the instrumentation. So you just save the scientists a lot of effort to manually enter that. So all that information is available, and it's all connected in a regulatory compliant way. So and the the system can be set up to be, if you want it to be non-compliant, you can be, but typically, as a minimum, you set it up to be silent auditing. So the system monitors what's going on, but it doesn't interfere with the scientist in any way. So then carry on their operations, their actions, without any interference from the system. So when you're employing that system, as I say, you can either go silent auditing or you can go through to double signature with witness, whatever. So you can set up the systems to suit your requirements. So what I'm trying to say in a very bad way is the system can be GMP compliant in a non-invasive way. You want to set up workflows. Those were discussed earlier as well. So you want to set up methods, you want to set up workflows, and very often the people who set those up, you want to be the scientists. You don't want to involve software engineers. You want them to keep out of it. So you want a simple drag and drop method of creating the workflows. We've got exactly the same situation in the PAT system, whereby the SMEs are developing the workflows, or I should say the authorized SMEs are creating the workflows, and then they get locked down and get used by whoever's authorized to use them. Same in the laboratory. So you have your authorized SMEs create the workflows, but using drag and drop methods, not by breaking into code, and then they can lock those down and they can be used by any authorized person. Naturally, we've got automated data integrity. So again, there's no question about where the data is stored, how it's stored, who, what, where, and when. It's all stored automatically in the system, and you know if anyone's gone and tried to tamper with it. Metadata was mentioned earlier on as well. Again, there are many methods by which metadata can be automatically added. I agree totally at times that metadata has to come from operators or the scientists, and I agree totally. We're then in the hands, as it were, of the scientists, whether they do or don't enter the metadata. But the key thing is you can add as much metadata as possible automatically, and it all gets aligned with the process, with the method that we call an orchestration. It gets aligned automatically with the process. So here you have real-time quality measurements coming in from one or coming in from dozens, hundreds of instruments in real time with time-aligned metadata in full compliance with regulatory requirements. So again, I would say it's sort of the holy grail of a smart factory, a smart laboratory as well as a smart factory. So moving on. You might also want to start small, and we would always recommend that you start small. Don't go in the big bang. It is, if you're very brave, then go for it. But start on a small example, try it out. So you might want a small system running on a little local controller with maybe one, maybe a dozen instruments. Try it out, see what the system's like. But then you might want to scale it to the cloud. You might want to run VMs. You might want to run on physical servers in your corporate data center. So the whole idea is the system can be scaled from a very small application through to a global application. You might want real-time and historic views of the data. You want to cut and dice the data in dozens of different ways. And different people will want to view and analyze the data and turn that data into knowledge in the way that they want to cut and dice the data. So the whole idea is you provide tools to enable the user to actually explore the data and turn the data into knowledge. Multi-users, you're going to have many users using the system. So the whole idea is to have client-server architecture whereby if you want one user, no problem. If you want 100 users, no problem. So you just have as many users as you want connect into the system, and they can all set up, as I'll show shortly, set up their own dashboards to view the data as they wish. Automation was mentioned earlier. Well, actually, automation has a great place in the laboratory, not only in the form of automating processes, which again I'll touch on, but also in the form of gathering data from simple instruments in a very cost-effective way, marshalling that data. So if you've got simple 4 to 20 milliamp, 0 to 5 volt, 0 to 10 volt instrumentation, it can collect that data and marshal it up to your PAT data knowledge manager in a very cost-effective way. So, but of course, your knowledge manager needs to connect to that, and needs to connect to it agnostically. So it needs to be able to connect to multiple platforms, whether it's Rockwell, Siemens, Beckhoff, whatever you're running. Repetitive processes, you need to be able to embrace cyber physical systems, which again is embraced by Industry Lab 4.0. So you want to run automated processes where possible, where it doesn't, as mentioned earlier, where it doesn't impede the scientists or science, but where it can actually save time, save effort. So you want to be able to automate the processes. And then global collaboration. And you might think, well, what's global collaboration? But if you're developing models and methods in, I don't know, in Basel, and you want to share those same methods in Shanghai, if you want to share the same methods in Puerto Rico, then the whole idea is if you have global collaboration, then not only can you share the IP, the knowledge, the methods that you developed in one region to another in a compliant way, but also you can share all this data, all this knowledge, all this information down to your manufacturing plants. And as you've collected all this data in a regulatory compliant way, it is transferable, it's acceptable to the manufacturing plants. So you start with your data in a regulatory compliant environment, and you're using the same platform for your manufacturing as you are in your R&D. So there's huge advantages. So for all of this, then you need what's termed a PAT knowledge manager. It's a system that hangs everything together. So what is a PAT knowledge manager? Well, as I say, it's a system whereby you can collect in real time data from multiple multivariate data sources, univariate data sources. You can carry out multivariate data analysis. You can carry out real-time predictions if you so wish. You don't have to, but you can. You can interface to all your third-party packages that you want to, whether it's Historians MES, whether it's SAP, whatever. You want to interface to all these different systems. You might want to interface to LIMS systems. If you want to run in a laboratory environment, if you want to run automated processes, then you need to be able to invoke automated control. Again, if you're talking about development laboratories for, say, flow chemistry, then you might want to look at flow modeling. And soft sensors. As I mentioned before, the system has to be scalable. So you might want to start with a small system and then grow the system into a global application. You need to be able to handle continuous improvement, and you need a system, again, as was touched on earlier, that is packaged, configurable. It is not a system that's bespoke. It's not a system that you have to start writing code for. It's a system that can be applied and can be rolled out and configured. It needs to be regulatory compliant. If it doesn't comply with cybersecurity needs these days, then you're dead in the water. And again, if it doesn't comply with the data integrity requirements, you're dead in the water. And of course, compliance with Industry 4.0 is a huge plus these days. So it's quite a complicated beast, especially when you say, okay, there are hundreds of different types of univariate data, multivariate data sources, and you want to be agnostic, so you can connect to, it doesn't matter whether it's a Brooker, whether it's a Kaiser, whether it's a Waters, whatever. You want to be able to connect to all these different instruments. So it has to be agnostic. So it is a monster task, but it is doable, and people are doing it. So one of the key things, one of the key benefits, as I mentioned, is you're talking about a standard platform, something that can be taken from your analytical laboratory, from your R&D pilot plant, or your GMP manufacturing facility. So the same technologies, same approach, same techniques can be applied to each of those different environments. Yes, certain key features of a knowledge manager will be of more interest to one application than the other, but the whole idea is you've got a toolkit that will be biased and used by the laboratory or by the manufacturing plant to suit their needs. And let's say the whole thing is the methods can be rolled out from, and don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about a specific laboratory analytical method, but I'm talking about like the prediction engines, things that you develop, the IP that you develop in the laboratory can be rolled out and used in the manufacturing environment. And as I say, can be used not only because of the same system, the same environment, but because of the GMP compliance. So this just emphasises whether you're going from the R&D development lab through clinical trials, through to GMP manufacturing again, and then the same package is used in the analytical laboratory as required during the GMP manufacture. Same top technology, same backbone, same application, same look and feel. So it just the commonality gives huge benefits to all involved. I mentioned before about automating the processes, and I agree totally. It's not applicable everywhere, but where you have multiple repetitive tasks, and on the left in the middle here, we have one example of what we call cyber physical systems. It's whereby we're using, in this example, it's actually on the left hand side you see I'll say a free running robot. But it's not an AGV in the normal sense. It's actually using techniques such as GPS. It's actually looking at its environment to actually drive itself around your factory, around the environment. So it can go to, in this example, to a tablet press, pick up samples of tablets, and then take those back to the laboratory. And it doesn't have to be a 6-axis robot. In this case, we've got a 6-axis, but it could be a SCARA robot. But the robot picks up the tablets, and in this case, inserts it into an MPA. It could be an Antares. It could be whatever instrument you choose. But it inserts the tablets into the unit, which then run the tests on the tablets. And I can't remember the USP, but it can run the testing required for those tablets, and then can say whether the batches are pass or fail. So it's automating a laborious task and taking, I'm not sure it's politically correct to say it, but it's reducing the labour requirements for that repetitive task. And again, the labour on that can be redeployed to other parts of the laboratory. The other example might well be, using the MAST system, integrating that into your laboratory, integrating into the total knowledge management platform, so that you can actually automate liquid sampling and again simplify the process of testing for bioreactors, as an example. So I'm just seeing how I'm doing on time. So, but there are many challenges. So it's the integration challenges for both laboratories, smart laboratories, and for a PAT system in the manufacturing is not straightforward. Some people jump into this and think, yeah, it's a piece of cake, but actually it is not. So first of all, you've got instruments. Now, as I say, a good PAT knowledge manager is agnostic. The whole idea is you don't want to have your hands tied by any platform on the instrumentation you use. You want to have a free choice. So the whole idea of a good knowledge manager is you choose the instrumentation that is fit for the best fit for the task at hand. So the knowledge manager talks bi-directionally to these instruments. So whether it's in this example, at the bottom there you've got a Kaiser. So it bi-directionally set up the Kaiser. So it sets the instrument up, and then it will run it either by automated or by manual command. So when you collect the data, you have all this metadata around the instrument for that particular experiment. So you have all the metadata associated with the instrument collected and aligned with the actual spectral data. And the same applies to any other instrument. So certainly from our perspective, as long as the instrument has a comms interface, then if we don't have an adapter, then we'll write an adapter for you so we can interface to the instrument. But the whole idea is that no matter who the vendor is, you want to be able to connect to that instrument agnostically. And then you've got univariate data sources. So as I mentioned before, you might have PLCs, you might have DCS, you might have simple I/O blocks where you're just collecting a small number, 1, 2, 3 analog inputs from a local point. We need to be able to connect to all of those systems agnostically. Naturally, you need to be able to interface bi-directionally with the human, with the scientists in the laboratory. So they need to be able to extract data and turn that data into knowledge, or they need to be able to input data, metadata, as they're running experiments. So you need to be able to interface to the users. Then you might have simple bits of equipment. You might have lab scales. You might have temperature, you might have pH. So you've got all these instrumentation sources that you need to be able to interface to. And as I mentioned before, very often for 0 to 5 volt, 4 to 20 milliamp or whatever, using a PLC or using an I/O source is a very good way of marshalling those simple analog points and getting them into a knowledge manager. And then you might have third-party packages, and there are many of them. But if you might have OCSoft, OCSoft is very commonly used in the pharmaceutical industry. You might be running Empower, you might be running Chameleon, whatever. You want to be able to interface to all these different packages and communicate with them bidirectionally. And whenever we're storing the data, store it, as I say, in a regulatory compliant way and line the data up with the experiment at hand. So again, it's another source of aligning all of the metadata. You don't always want to, but you might well want to run math on the functions. You might want to do some predictions. Again, the whole idea, again, same theme. You want to be agnostic. So you want to be able to interface your system to any MVA package that you choose. So whether it's Eigenvector, whether it's Camo, whether it's a Simca, whoever's package you want. Or you might want to run MATLAB, you might want to run Python, R, whatever, all these other packages. So you want to be able to interface to this system agnostically. So again, you need a package to handle that. And again, as everything I've mentioned so far, they've all got different interfaces. Yes, some of them use OPC, but there's all, OPC is just a layer. Then you have to be able to interface to it in a proper way. Each of these has their own specific drivers for communications. And then depending on the system, speed might be of importance. If it's a bioprocess, then speed obviously isn't normally associated with the bioprocess. But if you're running sort of continuous OSD or whatever, then speed is very critical. So you need a system that can be responsive, that can take many spectra a second if required. You need system resilience. So for some systems, if you lose a computer, you want it to be able to carry on in a relatively seamless way. So you need to have simple system resilience for some applications, and then you need global collaboration. As your system grows, yes, if it's a small system, you don't need this, but if you've got multiple applications around the globe, then it's by far it's better if you can collaborate between sites, share information, share knowledge, share data, and use IP that's been collected, being built in one environment with another. And then platforms, I mentioned this before, but you might want to start with a very small controller because you're starting with a small application, or it might be just a small laboratory. But then you might want to go through a physical computer. You might want to go up, which might give it desktop. It might be a server in your IT center. Then you might go into VM platform, and then you might want to run it in the cloud. So you might want to run one system. You might want to run multiple systems from the cloud. So the whole idea is you have a platform that is agnostic. It can run in the environment that you choose, and you can grow the application. So if you start on a small application and then you decide to grow it, you're not stuck. You can actually just migrate that application into the larger environment and just grow it. So you need something, again, that is scalable. And finally, I mentioned before, but you need something that is compliant. It can be non-invasive, but on the other hand, if you need double signatures, it can do it for you. If you want witness signatures, it can do it for you. So you can set up the compliance to suit the environment. You need full data integrity, and you need it to be cyber secure, to fit in with your cyber security requirements of the factory, of the laboratory. So when you roll all of these together, it's actually quite a complicated beast that you need, but it is doable, and it is being done, and it is being used. It's out there, it's available. So workflows in brief, I mentioned these before, but basically they're a drag and drop environment. So each one of these little blocks, I won't go onto each one on the screen, but each one represents a function or a data source or a data consumer. So a block might be it might be an HPLC, it might be a Raman, it might be near infrared, it might be FTIR, or it may be an analog point for a pH probe. So you can just drag it onto the screen, and you can configure it. Or if there's a template set up, you just say, okay, it's instrument X, template Y, and it's configured, it can run. And then you can either just run it manually or automatically. All the data, the configuration of the instrument, all goes into the database automatically. So all the metadata is collected as well as all the spectral data. And it can be simple one block. But then if you say, okay, well, now I'd like to pump that block into a decision, I'd like to pump it into a bit of maths, I'd like to pump it into a prediction engine, and you can pump it into, say, a prediction engine. So you might say, okay, I want to put it into a MATLAB block. So you drag the MATLAB model onto the screen, you connect it up, and then it can do the mathematical function that you decided to do on that data. Then you might say, okay, well, actually, I'd like to pump that data, not only store it in the local database, but I want to pump it out to, I don't know, OCSoft. So I'd like to pump it to OCSoft. So you just drag in the OCSoft block or an OPC block, depending on how you're connecting, in this case to OCSoft, and then you set up the connection and it pumps it out to that data consumer. And you might say, well, actually, I'd like to run some data fusion. So actually, when I run this method, not only will I collect the data from, I can't remember what instrument I said now, but not only am I connecting this data from this NIR instrument, I'm going to collect some temperature data, and I'm going to pump that into the math block at the same time. So you can run data fusion, so you can fuse the data together. Again, all metadata is being collected. If you need an operator interface, you can drag an operator interface block in there and ask them to enter information. At the start of the run, if you want to add metadata around product name, the actual batch, whatever you want to add, you can just add this in. So what I'm trying to say is it's very flexible, and it tries to automate as much of the metadata addition as possible. So if there's any questions on that later on, then they'll be pleased to answer it. So dashboards, again, different people want to be able to view the data in many different ways. So the whole idea is each user can have one or many dashboards, and you can display on that dashboard in a very simple way whatever data you want to display. And when you create the data, when you create the dashboard, it doesn't affect the source data in any way. All you're doing is displaying the data. So you can actually change these on the fly. You can modify them, and it makes no effect to the stored data. It's just the view you have on the data. So the whole idea, as I say, is each user can have one. So today they might be interested in the experiments used in area 1 of your laboratory. So they have dashboards set up for area 1. And they might also tomorrow want to look at area 2. So they have an area 2 of the laboratory set up. However you want to cut and dice it, you can set up the displays. But moreover, when you're running a global application, then actually you can view whatever's running anywhere in the world. So if you wanted to view what's going on, I'm trying to remember the example I used earlier, but if you say, okay, I've got experiments running in Basel, I've got them running in Shanghai and Puerto Rico, which I think with the examples I used, then you can set those up, and a single person in New Jersey with the authorization, I stress all the time, with the correct authorization, can view the experiments, all the historic data from each of those sites. So again, the dashboards can display whatever data, cut and dice the data in whatever way you want. Visualization. So the whole idea here is that you can cut and dice the data, whether you want scatter plots, whether you want 2D plots, 3D plots, time series plots, whether you want scores plots, influence plots. You just set those up, either historic or real-time views, to cut and dice the data, to show information on what's going on, any trends that are going on within the system, or in the case of scores plots, but whether your process in that example is in the state of control, or whether you're moving out of NOR into PAR or into out of spec. So again, cut and dice the data in whatever way you want, which then can lead you on to analyzing the data to actually get knowledge from the data. GMP capability. So all we're saying here really is that the PET Knowledge Manager provides a wrapper to go around what might otherwise be non-GMP compliant instruments. So yes, there are some instruments out there that are GMP compliant, but many are not GMP compliant. I'm not being prescriptive with the images there, but is the whole idea is we put a wrapper around these instruments to make them GMP compliant. So the data they collect in the laboratory can, or the information, the knowledge they gather, the IP that you generate can be used in the manufacturing environment. There's full traceability back to the instrument where the data came from, as well as all the metadata associated with it. So, as I say, I know I'm pushing the GMP compliance bit, but I think a critical thing is to get GMP compliance and the metadata on the information that's stored in your laboratory in the most non-invasive way possible. Lab and spectral data fusion. All I'm trying to say here really is, if you have take a sample, for example, say you analyze a sample, you gather spectral data, but then you have to take another reading, which will come back in several hours' time, a day's time. Then what we're trying to say here is you can get the system to print out a unique 2D barcode, and when that following sample is examined, you have the results, the data. This is usually used for model building. Then you can actually automatically associate the analyzed results uniquely back to the spectral data that you've gathered by using a 2D barcode, so that you no longer have to rely on an operator, an SME, a user to try and make sure that they line the analysis results up with the spectral data. The system does it automatically by using the 2D barcode. So it's automatic data alignment. Again, trying to simplify the process, trying to minimize how much work, trying to minimize errors of data collection. So as I say, the data-centric world has many demands. You know, if we're talking about smart laboratories, smart factories, and obviously we're biased, but we think that the patent knowledge manager meets many, if not all of these. So flexibility, as I say, around all the third-party interfaces. So again, I've mentioned this many times, but it's critical to be agnostic. So whoever's providing you with a PAT knowledge manager is agnostic. You can use whatever instrument, whatever data source, whatever data consumer, whatever mass package you wish to use. So it can be integrated into the system. You want methods that can be created in a simple way, not by using scripting, not by using software. You want a non-software person to be able to create all the methods. Knowledge management and generation. You need a system that can actually store the data, allow you to manipulate and analyze the data I stress, with all the raw data being unaffected, but to actually analyze the data either internally within the package, or allow you to export it to another package, a package of your choice for analysis, so that you can generate knowledge. It needs to be fully compliant, as I mentioned before, data integrity and cybersecurity. It needs to be able to cope with big data. I'm never quite sure where there's blurred lines between small data, medium data, and big data, but some of these systems gather huge amounts of data and needs to be able to cope with that. And I mentioned before, global centralization and controlled global dissemination, global collaboration of data and IP. So platform independence, I've mentioned this several times. I was afraid I was going to finish early, but I think I'm running out of time. Funny old life. Platform independence. So I mentioned before, start small. We always stress, whether it's a laboratory, whether it's a PAT system, start small. You know, dip your toe in the water. Don't invest too much money. See if the system you selected does what it says on the tin. If it does, then okay, fantastic, roll it out. If it doesn't, okay, all bets are off and you haven't lost too much. So start small. But then you need a system whereby, as I say, whatever you developed can be grown without change into your larger systems. So something that is scalable. I mentioned before, global collaboration within a controlled GMP compliant way. So the whole idea is, whether it's between analytical laboratories, whether it's between development laboratories, whether it's between manufacturing plants, you can actually control, share data between all of them, so that the global knowledge can be used. So there's not just pockets of knowledge. You can share, you can use other people's knowledge obviously with the authorizations and with the traceability. So, is a key point on that is so that if you're, I don't know, if you're manufacturing in New Jersey and the methods have been developed in I don't know, in Lille or wherever, then the whole idea is that when the manufacturing plant is audited, then there's full traceability of all the models, all the methods that have been used in the manufacturing plant, traceable back to the laboratory, the facility that developed those models, those methods. And by using a knowledge manager, then you have this full traceability as to who, what, where, when, who developed the model, how do they develop the model, what instruments do they use to develop the model, all the data treatments. You have all the information available. Global collaboration, I've mentioned this a few times. I see I've only got 5 minutes left. So mentioned a few times, but as I say, the whole idea, the sharing of data, the sharing of information is all in a controlled and regulatory compliant way. So it's not automatically shared. It's all with permission and with traceability. I mentioned before about data analysis. So in the patent knowledge manager you select, you might choose to analyze the data. And for our part, we have even more data analysis tools coming out very soon. So you might decide to cut and dice, do data analytics inside the patent knowledge manager, but you might say, well, actually, my favorite package is Tableau, my favorite package is Informa, or whatever. So you need a system that enables you to pump out the data, as I say, not changing the raw data that's stored within the knowledge manager, but to actually pump out the data to your third-party package of choice, either in real time or after the fact, so you can go and analyze the data, turn data into knowledge in this third-party package. So the whole theme with everything is not to tie your hands, to allow you to use the tools that you choose to use to your best advantage. And I think the final slide really is, again, if you want to pump the data to a data lake, pump it to the cloud, then again, you want a system that allows you either from the shop floor, so you might have a small system on the shop floor and you say, okay, I want to pump data to the cloud. Or you might say, well, actually, I've now pulled all my data together in my global corporate data center or wherever, and I want to pump that to the cloud. So the whole idea is you have a data pump that allows you to pump data to the cloud from whatever source you choose to have. So whether it's a small data source or whether it's a larger data source, you can pump it to your data lake, and then once again you can manipulate, you can do whatever you like with the data. The source data again is unchanged, but again you can the whole idea is you can have access the data, turn the data into knowledge in whichever way you choose best. So a quick summary, you'll all say hurrah. I think it gives 3 minutes for questions. So we believe, as I say, obviously we're biased, but we believe that a knowledge manager meets the needs of smart laboratories. There are huge parallels between the technologies required for patent knowledge manager and for smart laboratories. The bidirectional connectivity is really, it's not easy to do, and I just cannot stress how important that is. There is so much data that's connected around the instruments, so that is really worth having on its own. Automated regulatory compliance to whatever level you want. As I say, if you want to turn it all off, you can turn it all off, but not many people do. As a minimum, have silent auditing. But then, as I say, if you want to progressively select whatever action you want up to double signature with witness, then that can be done as well. Simplifying and automating where possible the addition of metadata. So the whole idea is we automate the addition of metadata wherever possible, and we simplify it wherever possible, and where that has to come from the users, from the scientists, then a matter of trying to make that as simple as possible. Yes, I agree. If they choose not to enter it, then we can't force them, but the whole idea is to try and minimize those tasks for them and to automate as much as possible. Automation of repetitive tasks. So if you've got labor consuming tasks that are repetitive, then you can automate those. I've only touched on it very briefly, but create templates. You can create templates. So if you've got methods that you use not only multiple times within your own laboratory, but around the globe, then you can create templates, and then you can actually share those between people to simplify the maintenance and the validation of those methods. So you can deploy either globally or locally. And I mentioned before, share methods, models, IP, whatever you developed around the world in a controlled way. You know, again, as I say, we're biased, but we think it's to have a standard application that can be shared between your laboratories and your laboratories of all types through to manufacturing platform is a huge benefit. That there's no disconnect between the laboratory and the manufacturing. And we see it as a critical component in any digitization transformation journey. So with that, I think actually just about on time, actually. So summary, we always say we use the practical application of technology. As I say, with any technology like this, approach it in a practical way, apply it in a modest way to start with, and then just roll it out. And that's me done. If there's any questions, then please do shout.
So perfectly. Thank you very much, first of all, Martin.
No worries.
Perfectly timed. We're probably a minute over. I have been asking the audience as we've been going through the session if there are any questions, but perhaps we'll pause for 30 seconds and give everyone a final opportunity to drop a question in the Q&A box. So if you look on the right-hand side, there's a function saying Q&A. Just drop the question in there, and then we can read it and we can pick it. I will take this opportunity to just mention that Martin obviously represents Optimal Industrial Technologies. They're exhibiting at the event, so they've got a virtual exhibition in the virtual exhibition area. So you can pop along to that and you can meet Martin and the team, where you can ask direct questions. So if you don't feel you've got a question for the session now, certainly do pop over. Martin and colleagues will be over there. You can pick up materials, you can pick up more information, you can arrange to meet with them now, you can arrange to meet with them later. But ultimately these guys are here sponsoring the event because they're able to provide solutions to people in the industry and hopefully solve some of the common problems that we're here to discuss today. So it doesn't look like there's any questions, Martin. We're a couple of minutes over anyway. On that note, I think once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
If everyone would like to take a break now, take the opportunity for the break to go over and meet with Martin and the team, but also the other sponsors as well. And we'll see you back here shortly for the next presentation. Thanks, you once again. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. All the best.